Hey there, Brandon Snyder, team leader of Selling with the Snyder Group, Real Relationships, Real Estate. And today we're back at it again with another episode of Why the Heck Are You Moving to Texas? Not really. We're going to talk about the top 3 unexpected costs of moving to Houston, Texas. This is something I get asked all the time by our clients who are moving from out of state. Hey, what should I be prepared for? What are the most expensive things? What's going to change from my current budget? So we're going to talk about the top 3 today. Before we get started, go ahead and subscribe, like the video, comment your questions. We want to know what you want to know about moving to Houston, Texas, and we'd be happy to help. I'm a California transplant, and like a good majority of our clients, there were quite a few things that I didn't know about when moving to Houston. Now, I didn't have to worry about it back then. In 2009, I had no aspirations of buying a home yet. When we bought our home a few years ago, we ran into some things that we really didn't expect as homeowners, especially Mary and I both being from California. So we're going to talk about 3 different things. Number 1, we're going to talk about property taxes. We're going to talk about why they're so freaking high. We're going to talk about how to lower your property taxes. And then we're going to talk about hail and windstorm insurance and flood insurance, which is a whole nother animal. A spoiler alert for you California people who've never experienced a hurricane. I have. It's not fun. And number 3, we're going to talk about energy costs. And this is something that a lot of people don't think about, but I can tell you, I'm staring out my window right now, and I could cook bacon outside because it's hot. In the comments, again, if you want to ask questions, want us to elaborate on anything that we talk about in this video, absolutely reach out to us. We want to be able to help you with your moving needs, or hey, I just need to know how this thing works. Absolutely happy to help you. Let's dive into it. Number 1 is property taxes. Half of my mortgage payment is my property taxes. This is absolutely insane to me. People talk about the affordability in Houston, how home prices are so affordable and your money goes farther. And then when they move here, they get a sticker shock. They think, oh, my mortgage is going to be lower than California, New York, expensive states that are $600,000 homes for what I paid $200,000 for out here. The problem is that there's taxes for your property. The 2 main taxing authorities that you need to pay attention to when moving to the greater Houston area are going to be school districts and water, which we call the municipality districts. The school districts are going to have the largest taxing item, unless you're in a rural area or you're in an older neighborhood. So the newer the neighborhood, the higher the taxes, and especially with school districts. Because what ends up happening, especially in places like Katy, Texas, or Cypress, Bridgeland area to be specific, you're going to run into newer schools being developed and built quite a bit more often than these older neighborhoods. And then the kids get rezoned, and the newer the school, the more money that has to be pumped into it. Tax dollars have to go into it to make it work. This is capitalism 101. That's how things get paid for. What ends up happening is those newer school districts have such a higher tax rate. I can tell you that I am in Hockley, which is technically like right outside of Fairfield, Cypress area, but our tax rate when I moved into my house was 3.7, about a $200,000 house. So my mortgage payment wasn't skyrocketed by it. Again, half my mortgage payment is taxes. And a lot of that has to do with school district and water district. You may get lucky. There are some neighborhoods in here in the greater Houston area that have a lower tax rate. They start out at 2.8, 2.7, 2.6. The older neighborhoods, I actually just had one the other day with a client that was 2.0, and that was the difference between them getting a house or not. Let's talk about this for a second. I want to dissect this because when you're looking at your mortgage payment and you're getting pre-approved for a mortgage, you may not actually be approved for a $350,000, $400,000 house if the tax rate's too high. So it's really good to get with a lender locally in Texas that understands the tax rates and how to work around them. Because I had this happen the other day. A lender said, well, I don't know what the tax rates are. I'm assuming that they're 1.5. I said, no, this house is a 2.3, 2.5, and we need to make sure that they're approved based off of that tax rate. It's really important you talk to a lender about that. When we're talking about school districts and MUD taxes, all that's going to be put in your escrow. So when you're making your monthly mortgage payment, unless you escrow your own taxes, and that's like 1 in 100 people, we don't talk about those people because they're way smarter than me. You're going to be paying your monthly taxes out of your mortgage payment. It goes into an escrow account and gets paid on your behalf. Here's why that's important. Every year you're going to get a tax bill from the county that says your house is worth X. you have the opportunity to do something called protest your property value. Because what's going to happen is they use data, they use an algorithm, just like Zillow uses an algorithm to tell you that your house is worth $50K more than anything in the neighborhood sold for. Shout out to Zillow. The algorithm will tell you what your house is worth. They don't look inside. They don't knock on your door, hey, can I come take a look inside and see what the property value is? They're not going to do that. It's all numbers based, all value, data driven. You actually have the opportunity to protest your property taxes every single year. Companies that can do it for you, they charge you a fee based on the money they save you. That's actually what some friends and family do. Or you can call your realtor. Hey, I sold you your house. Every year when property taxes come out, I can send you accurate comps in the past 3 to 6 months that will help deflate the value instead of inflate it. Because if there's anything we've learned through the past 2-3 years of COVID, is that everything's blown through the roof price-wise. Home-wise, all the prices have been inflated so much. So it's time to get back to steady appreciation. Now, here's the beautiful thing about Texas. We kind of consider ourselves recession-proof because we are a 3 to 5% naturally appreciating state. Normally, we don't count COVID. That was insane. 3 to 5% appreciation, you should get good equity in your home. Property taxes, go up every year, but you're protesting them, you're keeping them at bay. That sounds like a pretty good plan to me. But let's talk about the number one thing that you can do to save money on your property taxes, and that is exemptions. It's one of the best ways to save money on your property taxes every single year. Now, there are going to be 4 types of exemptions that you may qualify for depending on your situation. Number 1 is applicable to everyone in the state of Texas as long as you live in the house you purchase. That is the Homestead Exemption. Now, in most counties in the state of Texas, that is a 20% reduction in the appraised value of the home. That's a pretty significant difference, especially when we're talking about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 home. You're going to save a significant amount monthly in your tax bill. There's 3 other types of exemptions that we should be talking about here. And if you fit into one of these categories but aren't quite sure, give us a call. We're happy to help you and talk to you about this. 65 and older. This is an exemption for people who are older. Most of the time, these people are on a fixed income, so this is something that helps them with their tax assessed value. A lot of elder folks, they will buy their house cash, and this helps them significantly with their taxes every year. A disabled exemption. This cannot be mixed with the senior exemption. This is a separate exemption that is for someone who is on Social Security disability. This is big. If you are on this and you're not getting your exemption from the state of Texas, you need to make sure you do that. And lastly, which is what we see fairly common with our military relocation personnel, the disabled veteran exemption. Now, I can tell you that if it's anything less than 100%, the number isn't that great. But if you are a 100% disabled veteran in the state of Texas and you own a home, you do not have to pay property taxes. There's a couple of things to note here. When we're talking about mortgages, this means that you will qualify for more home because your debt to income ratio is significantly less because you don't owe that money on the taxes of the home. Here's the flip side of that. When you go to sell this home, there's going to be a point of contention because sellers normally credit taxes to the buyer. But if you are not paying taxes as a disabled veteran, then there will be no taxes going to the buyer credited for their escrow. And that is something that should be disclosed because it can make or break a sale. All of these items are beneficial for you to use in the homestead exemption, in taxable property value. You know now how to protest, how to go get exemptions. That's great. And that may not deter you from moving to the state of Texas. It didn't to me or my family, but I can tell you that it's something you need to be aware of. Now let's talk about number 2, wind and hailstorm insurance. If you live on the north side of town, northwest side of Houston, this may not be a concern for you. It's cheaper in areas that normally are not affected by wind and hailstorm often, but what I can tell you, it is mandatory in certain parts of the greater Houston area in multiple counties to the southeast of Houston. More specifically, Brazoria, Galveston, those are 2 counties that carry wind and hailstorm mandatory insurance. Now, we've seen it to where some even new builds are being built with the storm-proof wind shutters that go on the outside of the home. This is pretty crazy. It was new to me as a new real estate agent. I didn't understand why that was happening. And then I realized that hurricanes happen. So if you're from California and you're used to earthquakes, hurricanes are completely different. If you're from the East Coast or you're from Florida, you're like, oh, I'm already used to hurricanes. This is a normal occurrence for me. Maybe you're not used to those things. Hurricanes are a big deal here. Wind and hailstorm are huge problems. And so you need to pay attention to that. It can get costly, and it can also be the difference between you getting approved for a mortgage or not. A lot of people don't understand that. Oh, why is this insurance quote so high? Well, it depends on the area of town that you're choosing to live in. Because Houston is a metro area, we have so many different cities, and some of them are going to be more rural, like where I'm at, Hempstead, Magnolia, etc. And then some of them are going to be direct line of sight to the water, and that's where you're going to have mandatory wind and hail insurance. And I think this is probably the most expensive part of moving to Houston, Texas, outside of property taxes, is flood insurance. So I was here for Harvey in 2017. Experiencing Harvey was one of the most outrageous, traumatizing experiences for so many people. If you've never experienced a hurricane before, Harvey sat on us for multiple days and just dumped water, and it didn't stop. And then finally it did, and people's homes were underwater. People's lives were changed forever. When I talk to clients about moving to Houston, I tell them, you might want to be farther away from the water, because when hurricanes come, they're going to absolutely ravage the coastline. And it's not just wind and hail, it's flood insurance. When people buy a home, there are flood zones that we adhere to from FEMA that tell us, hey, this house is in this flood zone. And I'll give you a few examples here. There's the AE flood zone, which is like, this house could flood any minute, and you need to carry special insurance. It's actual flood insurance. And depending on if it flooded before and if the elevations changed, which you can get all of this information from your real estate agent or from an insurance agent, they can pull up the likelihood of it flooding again, but it can be really expensive. And sometimes it can be the difference between you getting approved for a mortgage or not on that specific home because of the flood zone. There is some solutions to that where you can actually get grandfathered into the policy that was there before from the previous sellers. That definitely can help you save a lot of money. Sometimes that's the difference between getting the home you want or not. The other solution is not moving to a flood zone. But we also have some other zones like flood zone X. Flood zone X is considered not a flood zone, essentially. Like, you don't have to worry about it flooding. And if it flooded, it was an act of God that actually did it. And then there's X500. X500 is it's going to flood once every 500 years. I don't want to scare you with this. We don't see hurricanes every single year during hurricane season. We don't see them twice a year. We don't see them all the time. Harvey was insane. And that was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Here's the flip side of all of this. You know, we talked about taxing our money and our property taxes, and where does that money go into? Over the past probably 7 years, a lot of the tax dollars, and I mean billions, and including, you know, government aid and things like that, have gone into making Houston a safer place to live water-wise. I mean, people were just like driving into water, and there was underpasses you just couldn't get through because there was so much water and things like that. I mean, so many people lost their cars. Houston's really worked on that, but there are just going to be flood zones and homes in flood zones that you cannot get out of, and you need to pay attention to that when you're looking at a home in the greater Houston area. And number 3 is energy costs. Something you may not know is Houston's hot, like really hot. And when I moved here, I was really impressed with how everything was air conditioned, and most people had newer cars because it's too dang hot out here. Energy costs are going to be one of the main reasons why your monthly living expenses are higher in Houston. It's going to be hot 9 months out of the year, and so you need to make sure that you're running the AC, and it's going to be hot. I'm looking at the bacon sizzle outside right now. It's like 95 degrees outside. So my AC is at 72. It stays at 72 for about 6 months out of the year, because if not, I don't sleep well. And so this is something that you need to keep in mind. You're going to be spending more money monthly on your energy bill. If you buy an older home and the AC maybe hasn't been fixed or it's not newer, then you're going to run into higher energy bills. The windows maybe aren't newer. There's going to be a lot of factors when purchasing a home here that could really hinder how much you're spending a month on other things that aren't housing expenses. I would highly recommend that you take a look at the different options available for energy brokers in the Houston area. Something of note, if you're from California or another state where they only have 1 or 2 energy companies, California has PG&E, that's it. In Houston, we have umbrella companies, and the umbrella companies then have different companies below them, and you can get a broker to go find you a cheaper rate, and you can shop your rates just like you would your insurance every year. This is something that I would pay attention to when it comes to your energy bill. So there's your top 3 things that are probably unexpected costs when moving to Houston that you should think about. If you want to elaborate anything that we've talked about in this video, please comment below or reach out to us directly. We would be happy to talk to you about moving to Houston. What areas are lower tax rates? What areas don't have flood zones? Things like that. We'd be happy to chat with you about your move to Houston, Texas.